Awesome. Perfect. Well, my name is Whitney Belk. I am one of the assistant directors of admission at UNC Greensboro. I specifically work with students from the Charlotte metro area. I have worked at UNC Greensboro for about 5 years in admissions. And then prior to that, I worked at High Point University in admissions, so about 10 years in higher ed. So excited to be here tonight to talk to you all just about the general taking the stress out of the application process, and excited that y'all are all here to learn a little bit more.
And I'm Lisa Cote. I serve as an assistant director in the Office of Admissions at the University of South Carolina in Columbia, South Carolina. And like Whitney, I've spent most or all of my career in college admissions counseling. I worked for another public institution for a number of years in admissions in South Carolina. And then I also served as a college counselor at a high school. So very familiar with the process from the other side and the stress that comes along with college applications and deadlines and keeping up with everything. So we're really hosting this as informal, and you're welcome to pop on the microphone to ask questions as we're talking, if there's anything that we can clarify or help out with. And then also we'll have time at the end for some questions if you have them. And we'll go ahead and get started. I think Whitney's going to take it away with our first topic.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, it's going to be very informal. We just have some kind of tips and tricks, and ultimately want to kind of share just our experiences with you all. One of the first things that we like to talk about is definitely just planning ahead and getting organized. That's a huge part of taking the stress out of this process when thinking about applications. You probably have looked at different colleges and institutions and know that there are many different deadlines that different institutions have. There may be different requirements for specific universities. So definitely kind of planning ahead and making sure you're well aware of those requirements and kind of what that looks like. So really we encourage students to, again, start looking at that. And Lisa has actually a great tip for a way to kind of keep up with with those deadlines and making sure students and families are well aware. So I want her to share that for sure.
Yeah, so one thing I heard over the years that was really helpful, especially if there are any parents listening in tonight or family members that are invested in your college search process, is to have some sort of document. And I think paper actually works really well in this case because it's something that's visible, that you write out your colleges and the deadlines and maybe even some other things that you need to send in, any other credentials or that sort of thing. And that once you've completed something, you put a check mark or have some visible way for everyone to see what's going on in the college process. It's also a nice reminder for you as you're passing by the fridge that there's a deadline coming up on October 15th and oh my gosh, it's October next week. So with that, it allows the student to communicate without the parent or family member having to say, hey, have you turned in that application for XYZ? I knew it's due soon. That sometimes creates more stress because the student's like, when is the date? I don't know. I don't have it in front of me. It helps family members communicate where they are in the process very easily and quickly, because if you update that piece of paper, everybody knows that's where you're at. The other thing with that is some families find it a lot easier to share a Google Doc or some kind of Google Sheet where they've got deadlines that everybody knows about and digitally update it that way. It's a good way to stay organized too, because you can quickly edit it without using a eraser. But I loved the visual because I think it's something that we're looking at our phones and computers a lot right now, especially with COVID. And it's a way that as you're passing by, it's another just gentle reminder that there's something coming up without a family member having to say, hey, that deadline's in 2 days, and that stress building up because the student knows it's due. It's just they're trying to prioritize what they've got on their plate. So there's a lot of different ways you can stay organized. You have to use the tool that works best for you. But whatever you do, put it all in one place and that'll save you some heartache later.
Absolutely. And kind of going off of that too, knowing that those deadlines are coming up and staying organized, definitely planning ahead, I think is going to be huge as well. I think one of the questions that we get a lot is, a student will submit their application and email us, the next day and say, hey, did you get my application? Or, hey, my high school counselor sent my transcript last night. Can you check to see if I received it? Planning ahead is so important in this process because things take time to be sent to us from your school, for them to be physically delivered, whether that's electronically. Colleges and universities have different operations teams that download and scan in and match up different items to your specific file. So it can be very stressful if you wait until the deadline and potentially are starting out, submitting an application with a deadline of midnight and your internet goes out, or there's some type of issue with a specific platform, or and knowing that when universities have deadlines, typically they are going to be very hard deadlines where they need all of your materials, not just your application, but your transcript, any test scores that are required, letters of recommendation, essays. It means like your full application completed is delivered by that deadline. A lot of schools have great either access to different portals that you can kind of track and see what they have received. So definitely planning ahead in that, knowing that it takes time. Some schools may say it may take, 4 to 6 weeks to get a transcript sent or an application. It's typically not that long, but you want to make sure that you give yourself plenty of a grace period to know that it's not an instantaneous process. Because I know so many things in our world are instant, but this is definitely not one of them.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many emails I've gotten on the day after the deadline. Like, I tried to submit, but something happened, and you can just see and read the stress that is on that email. So save yourself a little bit of heartache, do it a couple days ahead, and you will thank yourself later. You won't know what you missed out on. But with the deadline piece, colleges are certainly understanding, but it's not the same as high school, where if you forgot to turn in an English paper, that you're given an extension to turn it in. In many cases, that's it. That's your chance. So if you plan ahead, like Whitney mentioned, your deadlines that are coming up. And some institutions will have a credentials deadline. So, those letters of recommendation can come in later after the application. We don't want you causing stress on your school counselors too, that they need to submit it the day that you're submitting everything as well. So if you keep them in the loop with your deadlines and what you need sent, they'll thank you as well later. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the application itself and where you can save yourself some stress as you're filling it out. You'll notice that there are a lot of drop-down options within the application that you get to select a few things. And I'll let Whitney talk a little bit about application plans and terms and when and how all of that looks. There's also another session about admissions terms that if you haven't gone to it, it's a really good thing to listen to. But when you're filling out the application, you'll come across several boxes that are open, and you are given the chance to write whatever you'd like in there. And that may be an essay, that might be a short answer, that might be a question like, why do you want to attend college XYZ? And I think students go along and they're good and they get the rest of the application. They will say, I'm almost done with my application, but really the pieces that take potentially the most amount of time, the writing, is left blank until they're ready to submit. So I know that the heart starts racing as you're thinking about, what am I going to say in these boxes? And all I can, assure you at this point is, don't write what you think we want to read. Write authentic to yourself. If you start writing a few sentences and you can't get very far, you're probably not writing about the topic that is, most important to you. And reading applications is one of my favorite things to do in our, season that we go through from basically November to February. And it's the chance for us to see more about the student and what their life is like in the high school or what they've been through over the past 4 years. So you're given a space to share more about yourself. And so we want you to be authentic. We want you to share the highs and lows, whatever those look like, obviously speaking to the prompt or whatever the question is, but don't feel like you have to embellish or go crazy with anything in there that you think a college wants to hear. 9 times out of 10, we can tell when it's a little bit over the top. And otherwise, when you speak to something that's interesting to you, you're going to have a lot to say about it. And the word count's not going to even matter because you are so ready to talk about it. So I know there's an essay session too, so I don't want to, spoil what they have to say, but and anything where you get that box or that opportunity to write, take it as just that, an opportunity to share. If you were able to sit down with a college admissions officer, what would you want to tell them? So use that space to your advantage.
Absolutely. And I wanted to touch a little bit on another thing that can be stressful, as Lisa mentioned, are all of the different terms when you are pulling up an application and trying to navigate which specific deadline that you're trying to apply under, or which one is the best fit for you. So for different institutions, the requirements are going to be different, but sometimes there are also different types of applications that you can submit. You'll see for some, they may have 4 different options: early decision, early action, sometimes early action 1, early action 2, a regular decision, a rolling admission. So that's where it's really important to start looking, at those terms and seeing what schools that you're applying to have the different options and which is the best fit for you based off of that institution. So you'll see the term early decision at some universities. That is a term that means that it is essentially a binding agreement. So that means when you apply to this institution and submit your application under an early decision, that you are really kind of signing a contract saying, yes, if I am admitted into this institution, I am willing to withdraw all of my other applications from other institutions, and I am 100% committed to your school. You're also committing and saying, no matter what my financial aid is, no matter what scholarships I receive, I am all in. Typically, that is going to require a student signature, a parent signature, and a school counselor signature. So it is going to be a big commitment. Also, there's the term early action, which typically is going to be for students who want an earlier answer on their application, but not going to have that binding kind of component to that. Regular decision are those that typically are sometime in February, March, sometimes even April for some institutions. And then rolling admission really means that whenever you finish that application, they kind of review different applications and your materials on a rolling basis. So once they get your materials, they'll kind of go ahead and receive that, process it, and go ahead and get you a decision. So I think that that's something that can be very stressful when you see all these terms like, oh my gosh, is there a best fit for me? And it can cause a lot of stress later too, because if you submit this early decision or you feel like, oh gosh, I should have done this a little bit different and submitted a different one, it can be very stressful. So again, just keep that in mind, that going into the application process and when doing kind of your research and the requirements, and that may even be a good thing to talk to your school counselor about, or whoever's helping you throughout the college application process, just seeing if that is a good fit for you to do any of those specific terms versus another.
Next, I'll talk a little bit more about the decisions and, you're expecting something back from colleges and students feeling like they have no control in the process. And I actually want to share that you have more control than the colleges do at this point and beyond. So if you want to think of it like a game of volleyball or a tennis match, I'm going to try and describe what I'm talking about. So if you're getting ready to serve the ball, which is an application to a college, you get that choice on where you're sending your college applications. If you decide you're never going to apply to a college, they never get the chance to return the ball back to you. So where you're sitting right now and where the college applications are is you making that serve or tossing the ball over to our court. While we hold on to the ball for a little while as we're reading college applications to get decisions back to students, we will then toss it back to those, especially if in the case of admitted, for you again to make another choice if you're going to choose to enroll. So then you again have options to serve that ball the final time to your college of choice. So When students are at this phase, especially right now, the anxiety is high because they're worried about the decision later on down the road and not so much about the application itself. So these are the elements that you have control over right now that I want you to think about. The first is the application answers, like we were talking about, the things that you can put within the application. The next is the essay. You're able to have folks read over it for you to help proofread, to make sure it sounds like you. And again, if there's interest in more about the essay, check out that session because I'm sure it's great. Your letters of recommendation, even though you don't physically write them, you get to choose who's writing that letter of recommendation for you. You have that option if one's required for your application process. And the part where you have more control than you think is providing a resume or some sort of list of achievements to this person that's writing your letter of recommendation. One example might be if you were in a biology class and you've asked your biology teacher to write you a letter of recommendation. You can share a little bit about why you enjoyed the class. Why was biology an interesting topic for you? And that's something that the teacher, you may not have shared with them before, might include in the letter. It's not necessarily writing the letter, but it's sharing more about yourself that then they can translate into their letter of recommendation. As much as we hate them, the SAT and ACT tests, you actually have more control than you think on the score. And as much as you don't want to do the test prep because you have a million other things to do, you have the time to sit down, maybe even an hour a day or a week to prepare for the tests ahead if you are planning to submit test scores as part of your applications to institutions. I can tell my senior self now, stop taking the test over and over without test prep in between because you're going to get the same result. So sit down. I can say from my own experience, take the time to do the test prep because you have that control over that right now before you're testing again. And then lastly, we want you to focus on your senior year, and that incorporates a lot of things. It includes the classes that you're taking, enjoy them, do well in them, all of that still matters in the process. But also you're a senior in high school, so take time to look around and enjoy the time that you have left in high school. We don't want you to get to March of your senior year and then be like, whoa, where did all the rest of those months go? Because I've been so focused on the college process. And there's so many life events that happen in your senior year. So definitely enjoy it and try to take it all in. And there may be other things you can control in the process, but I can assure you, you have way more control than you think right now.
Yeah, I think that those are awesome because I think so much, even though there is some control that the universities do have, there is so much that students have the opportunity to share with us and what they put down and what they share with those letters of recommendation too. So I think that's a great piece, a nugget of advice. Another thing too that I want to mention is that it can definitely help and take some stress out if you reach out and work with college admissions offices and admissions counselors like us. At each institution that you're applying to, there are specific admissions counselors or admissions representatives who typically represent or work specifically, whether that's a specific county or a specific state or a specific part of the country. And a lot of times those are going to be the specific representatives who will not only maybe come to your school or do different presentations like this, but also maybe working specifically with your application or reviewing that. So it definitely can take some stress away if you just ask questions, if you reach out to admissions counselors, especially in this era of COVID when things are kind of changing with some requirements and maybe things are more fluid and look a little different than they did. So make sure you pick up the phone and call admissions offices. I think that sometimes can be, sometimes students are fearful to do that, but we want to hear from students. And as much as we want to hear from parents and family members, hearing directly from the student and seeing that kind of demonstrated interest in working directly with them. That's why a lot of us do what we do is that student connection. So make sure you are not afraid to pick up the phone and ask questions, send emails, utilize specific websites, even though there's a lot of helpful information on a college website. Sometimes you never know if sometimes it's hard to dig a little bit deeper into those. It may be outdated information, but making sure, you're utilizing the university's website and not looking at, maybe another like publication, things like that. I think that that can be very helpful in taking some stress out, because you may see different information on different websites and things. So make sure you reach out to us. It also can be helpful to go ahead and obviously plan college visits. I know that that has looked a little bit different in the last little bit, but planning a college visit can take a lot of stress out, whether it's doing a virtual presentation where it's physically going to campus. That can take a lot of stress out as well, because a lot of times you're getting a formal admissions presentation by an admissions counselor. You're getting to see a campus from a student perspective. So again, make sure you utilize that. That can asking those questions and being very straightforward can really, really help you take some stress out of that too.
Yeah, the folks at college campuses and the admissions office are friendly. They're willing to help and excited to help. And we're not the scary people reading applications. We want to make sure you get everything in just how you want it to be. And Whitney, I know, has mentioned that she's the Charlotte Metro rep. While I work in the admissions office, we have a specific Charlotte Metro rep as well. And her name is Megan Gallagher. You're welcome to reach out to her or myself if you have any questions. But again, it's really, don't ask a question if you don't have one, but as you come across the pieces that seem confusing, or you want more clarification, or you want to get connected to a current student, or whatever it might be, let us help you, because this is the piece of our jobs, like Whitney said, that we really enjoy, and getting to meet prospective students, and also help you find the right fit. So if you can find out information from the reps themselves, that's wonderful, because it can help you narrow down your, final choices when it gets to that point of the year. I know we have a few seconds left. Does anyone have any questions about, or things that they're stressed about that they want to hear more about?
Well, again, thank y'all so much for coming. If there anything else we can do, just let us know.